Hey there, and welcome to the People Who Help People podcast. This is the spot for HR and people ops pros who are all about building better businesses by putting people first. We chat with founders and experts who've been there, done that, and are generous enough to share what actually works. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hello again. Today I'm happy to be speaking with Shelby Mounts, Executive Director of NextOp Veterans, about a new mission. Discussing career transitions, scaling a people-first nonprofit business, and the special work of NextOp Veterans. Shelby is a retired Navy captain, CEO of Riverside Consulting Services, and a former defense company executive. Today, we'd like to speak with Shelby about his work at the helm of the nonprofit NextOp Veterans, where they bridge the divide between enlisted veterans and companies looking to hire military talent. Hi, Shelby. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Craig. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Happy to have you. So, Shelby, tell me how you came to NextOp Veterans. Did you found it, or was it already an existing organization?
No, I didn't have the idea for it. When I joined, the organization was about 8 years old, and it was a great idea, just looking for an opportunity to grow.
Terrific. So 8 years when you joined. When did you join?
Almost 3 years ago now. We just had our 11th birthday earlier this week. And
Happy birthday.
I found out about NextOp through the Naval Academy alumni magazine, Shipmate, actually. There was a spotlight article. They had introduced this new 5-minute spotlight on alumni who are doing interesting things out in the civilian world. And I liked that little spot, so I flipped to it in the magazine every time. And I saw Stephanie Drake, executive director, who was also a grad. And Stephanie and I had gotten to know each other when I was a SecDef fellow at Shell Oil. And I had gone on a military recruiting trip with the Shell military recruiter, and they brought veterans along with them on those trips to help do some of that translation of those looking for opportunities in oil and gas. And Shell has a particular language, as the industry does, and the military has a different language. And so Stephanie and I had met on a trip, and years later, I saw this article and I said, wow, what is Stephanie up to? I've got to know. And so I read the article, and it just really struck me that the mission of serving enlisted military members and veterans in transition was so important. And all of us, I think, that come out of the military have struggles with understanding how to convert that experience and skill set and all that you bring as a military member into the civilian world, because we just don't know what the opportunities are and how to put the right language to it. And so that's what sparked it. I reached out to Stephanie on LinkedIn. She responded, and we had a nice call. And at the end of that call, she said, hey, we survived COVID, and we've got a really good program, but it's time for it to grow. And I think we need somebody to come in and do that. And I threw my name in the hat and got the job.
Wow. How long between when she raised the idea, would you come in and help us out, to when you started?
It was pretty quick. I think after that conversation, she introduced me via email to the board president at the time, who happened to work at Shell, ironically, another Navy veteran. And we had a good call. And then I got passed over to the incoming board president. After that, an Army veteran and grad. And at the end of those series of conversational interviews, I'll call them, where I basically scoped out my experience, particularly running a remote team during COVID, because we've increasingly become a remote first organization as we grow, as well as my various industry experiences. And then they took a few days to have a board vote, and I was offered the role. So maybe 3-4 weeks.
So I have so many questions, and it's right here at the beginning of this discussion. Okay. First one. Target audience, those that you serve. You said enlisted veterans. That's across all branches of service? Because you've mentioned the Navy a lot.
We do. We serve all branches, including Coast Guard, and we're focused on post 9/11 enlisted. The organization for the first 9 or so years was really E3 to E7 focused. What I found was that although that is still the lion's share of military service members, it gets a bit lost in translation when you have short period of time to talk to civilian talent acquisition or leadership to explain what a difference between an E3 and an E7 and an E8 or E9 might be, right? So in the end, it didn't change our programming or our mission at all. We just cleaned up the language and said, why not all post 9/11 enlisted. That's not to say we haven't helped older generations or officers. We've helped both, but it really kind of becomes a bandwidth limitation and where our focus is.
Those that are helping your clients, those you assist, I read that a lot of them are veterans as well.
That's right. We're up to 20 employees now. We were 10 when I joined. 18 of us are veterans, pretty exclusively those that have served and retired or maybe been medically retired, and then have some industry experience, maybe went into, get an education and working a lot from recruiting, talent acquisition type roles that want to come back and give back.
Terrific. I assume that everybody who is counseling a transitioning veteran was once a transitioning veteran, but have the added benefit of they've worked in recruiting or talent acquisition and they understand what recruiters and talent acquisition professionals are looking for.
That's right. All of our what we call employment coordinators that handle the one-on-one caseload of a candidate are prior military. As we've grown, we have been able to introduce a management layer in our organization, which didn't exist before. We've built out our management typically around a region as we've expanded, or a specific industry focus like aerospace and defense and soon to be energy. So each of those managers will typically have a supporting employment coordinator for their region or their industry focus. And then we have marketing, which is a non-veteran, and one of our regional managers is a non-veteran, but engaged and soon to be married to a former Marine.
Perfect. Yeah. So how do you judge a manager? You're a nonprofit, so you're not out to make the most money. What does success look like?
It's funny, people, and I had never run a veteran-focused organization or a nonprofit before I came here. Had done a number of years volunteer work at the Naval Academy Alumni Association and chapter in Washington, D.C., which gave me some of the tools. Running remote teams in my previous job definitely gave me more tools, and being in the C-suite and engaging with the board and developing budgets and those sorts of things. But in the end, a nonprofit is still a business. It just has a tax advantage. And so the need to go out and generate revenue in one form or another is critical. And the better you do that, the more you can invest back into your team, both from the perspective of the benefits that your team members get, as well as the tools that you provide them, the opportunity to travel and put on high quality events, as well as to do outreach and improve your marketing and grow your impact. So it takes each one of those strings on the guitar, so to speak, to make it all hum. And that's one of the big focal areas that I've brought, is this business sense that, yes, we have a mission, but without the money, there is no mission. So we have to be savvy on how we spend it. We're accountable to the public, obviously, in that way, and we have to file transparent IRS documents to that effect. But at the same time, the more we can generate, the more impact we can show. And I think that really stands out, not in just our number of candidates placed, which has grown every single year since I've been in, but also the transparency ratings that you see through various different nonprofit rating agencies, from the customer success feedback that we get from our partners and from the candidates that we've placed, et cetera. The one that really probably stands out the most to me, though, is we're greater than 90% retention in nearly 3 years I've been here now. So I think that says volumes, both for the mission, for our ability to invest in our team, but also for the culture that we maintain.
Greater than 90% retention. 90% retention of those who are the counselors?
My team overall, for my team.
Of the 19, your team. Okay.
Yep.
So folks have a mission, they're dedicated to that mission, and they're doing well serving that. And under your leadership, the nonprofit is thriving.
Yes, I think so. Okay. Yep.
How about the candidates at your place? What success metrics do you track for them other than a placement?
Right.
I imagine there's time for placement, et cetera.
Yep. We have a few. We use what's called time to place. And that is, having jumped out of airplanes, I use it kind of like an airborne thing. You're shuffling along with your cord, and as soon as the light goes green for you and you jump out, that you want that parachute to open as quickly as possible, right? You know you're going to be okay. And so we set a metric each year, which interestingly, when I first came in, was trending down pretty steadily. And I think it was a direct reflection of our focus as well as the efficiencies of retaining our staff, investing in Salesforce, and improving some of the automation inside Salesforce, improving our ability to develop relationships with employers and get candidates into those jobs quicker, right? But over the last year and a half, we've seen that metric extending over and over again. And at first, we thought maybe it was some of the changes we had made inside of our system, but I scan a lot of different newsletters and a lot of different things about what's going on in the economy, around the world, et cetera, and in business. And it's apparent from what I hear from other nonprofits, for-profit talent agencies, and in general, in the macro, that the time to get a job is extending pretty significantly. We've gone from 37 days to place 2 years ago to about 73 now. Yeah. Now, at the same time, our numbers placed, which is a corporate metric, is continuing to go up, and up. And so this will be the first year that we placed more than 1,000. We're very close to surpassing last year's total of 773, which was the all-time record. So I think we'll hit that this month. Other things that we look at for the candidates themselves are their starting salaries. We believe it's in our mission to try to help our candidates land the best starting salary that they can, so that they can provide not only a good livable wage for themselves and their families, but also there's been lots of evidence to show that where you start influences where you go. And so it indicates the level of work that you're starting in and the opportunity that you can continue to grow out of. And so that's one that we also watch very closely.
Back just a little bit. Time to place, time to opening that parachute is extending significantly. It's more than doubled. What's driving that?
I think it's the economy right now. Employers, you can read in any number of different newsletters that people aren't leaving their jobs. So the companies don't have to go out and replace them as quickly. Companies are not investing in as much growth right now. And so I think the combination of those two things, it's just generally drying up the jobs market. And so it takes longer for us to identify the proper fit with a candidate, and then for that candidate to get through the hiring process, which it depends on the industry and the size of the company and the particular individuals, but it just seems like hiring processes are not super fast. The good news is we can help walk our candidates to an actual person and apply for a real job and to get hired in a way that sitting at home and applying through LinkedIn Easy Apply or sending in a million resumes and hoping or even using AI, as I hear now, to send out many resumes is apparently not working out for people.
Sure. I think there's a battle of the AIs. There's the candidates that are using AI to try to optimize a resume to be recognized by those AI tools that the companies are using to find the perfect candidate. And yet the challenge remains that there's many unfilled positions and many talented folks looking for work, and it's finding ways to connect the two. So speaking of that, are you, as part of that process, are you upskilling the individuals? Certainly you're helping them with the transition and the translation, as you said early on, but how else are you augmenting their skills, preparing them for the workforce, the civilian workforce?
Right. So when I joined, I went back and read some of the founding documents of the organization, and it was in the DNA always to recruit, develop, and place. This organization is very good at recruiting the talent in, and about 40% of our candidates come to us word of mouth. So we obviously, I think that's a secondary indication of success. However, the D was really small in development. And it was focused around take that individual candidate, help them figure out their why, the what, the where, make sure they have a tailored, appropriate resume. They know how to conduct an interview and how to go apply for a job. And that could be us giving them the job that we have in our system and saying, we think this is a good fit for you. Here, go apply and we'll connect you to the talent or hiring manager. Or we encourage them to find jobs on their own and use other resources on their own as well. And so we have a vetted list of resources that we make available to our candidates to go use. And a lot of them end up taking that fishing lesson that they got and their fishing pole and finding a job on their own, right? And that's perfectly acceptable. So that's kind of been where the organization was. And we were lucky probably at the end of my first year or so on board that we got introduced to a training organization for the Navy called ATDM in Danville, Virginia. accelerated training in defense manufacturing. And they have 5 tracks, 4 months long, for free training and housing. And they had a goal to get more veterans into this, to get them through skilled trades like welding and machining, in order to fulfill some of the workforce needs in the submarine industrial base. And so it seemed like a good opportunity. We partnered up with them. We started figuring out their programs and how to market those programs to candidates and to guide candidates into that training. And those conversations opened up more doors, and those doors led us to ultimately a contract to place 100 candidates into the submarine industrial base funded by Blue Forge Alliance with Navy money. We succeeded in bringing on an aerospace and defense program manager, which was our first industry-focused hire to go build out that ecosystem and engage with the employers, the training partners, and create the suction to pull candidates into these roles. With that success of exceeding, we ended up placing 122 on that contract. We got a follow-on contract for 300 to expand it to the maritime industrial base. And now we've hired our very first dedicated recruiter under that contract. And so it continues to grow, continues to open more doors. That model taught us that partnering with a training institution like that is great, because we now have 45 graduates that have gone through and are placed. We have about another 15 in training right now. ATDM allows us to engage all the veterans that come to the pipeline in order to offer our free services to them and help place them and augment career placement on the backside. That model is being replicated at other community colleges, technical schools, training institutions, through other geographic areas of interest and other industry focals. That model transcends a particular industry focus and can be more generic, with guiding candidates into 2 or 4 year institutions, working with them as their student veterans, and then helping to place them on the backside. Because historically, we've seen about 15% of our candidates coming to us from 4-year university, where they use their GI Bill in most cases, and they graduate and they still don't know what to do. And so we help them with that.
Terrific. So you mentioned you're hoping to place 1,000 this year, but it sounds like there's some selectivity in that process. It's not just anybody who comes along and would like a job, but there's some blend of perhaps companies or organizations seeking talent and you seeking talent to find roles for.
Yeah, our goal is 1,100 this year, which, last year was 750. We placed 773 last year. So fairly significant increase again, with very little FTE growth. It's a challenge, but the team continues to rise to that challenge. In addition to just increasing the numbers and even the geographies and the industries, like I mentioned, aerospace and defense and energy soon to come online, but we also expanded into Dallas, Memphis, Nashville, Huntsville, Alabama, and we've hired the recruiter in Mississippi. We've got a employment coordinator outside Mobile, Alabama. We've got another one in North Carolina, and then our 2 offices are in Houston and New Orleans. So we're pretty well across the Southeast physically, even though with this virtual, blessing we have, we can and do engage candidates all over the world, and we bring in employers from all over the country. I think that combination is part of the secret sauce for why we've been able to ramp up our numbers, because we have a lot more jobs in the system. We have a lot more employer relationships. And even though the time to place is increasing, we're still hitting targets and getting people into ever increasing higher salaries. That's a great success story there.
Ooh. Yeah.
If you come to us and you can pass the basic entrance requirements, post 9/11 enlisted, and you've had no legal issues in the last 10 years, then you should be able to pass a drug test. That's what we say, but we don't test. That's typically the employer's job. Then we'll work with you and we'll provide free services. As we have done all of this expansion and this industry focus, we've had to essentially, I say, go from being shotgun to rifle shooters. We're not snipers. We can't say, give me this one role and I will go find that person for you. That's not our model. Historically, we've told employers, look, we have access to the enlisted population, which is 80+% of the military. They're a wide variety of talent. They might be a couple of years in the military and getting ready to get out with no formal technical training, or they might have been in the service, gotten out, and have 10 years of industry experience with multiple master's degrees. It is a wide range of talent. So we can give you access to that talent virtually and in person. We can help guide candidates to your jobs and your opportunities, and we can give you the microphone to talk about that and elicit interest in your company, right? But as we have gotten more relationships and more bandwidth and more focus, we now can say we can actually go out and carry that message for you, extend your reach, and try to identify if there's a specific type of talent or background where we might be able to go find it or guide people in to get it. And that's kind of into the upskilling and training piece of it right there.
Very impressive.
Thank you.
So reach. You mentioned Dallas, Memphis, Huntsville, a lot of the Southeast. Are you closer to where the jobs are or where your candidates are, or perhaps both?
Well, we were founded in Houston back in 2014, went live in 2015 around oil and gas. I mentioned Shell earlier. I left in the summer of 2014 to go back to the Pentagon, and oil and gas was still over $100 a barrel at that point. It wasn't too long after that it crashed. So by 2015, oil and gas jobs, the boom bust, it was into the bust cycle of oil and gas at that point. So the organization was still very much focused on in-residence veterans in Houston. And so they shifted into other industries like construction and logistics. And it wasn't until 2017 that they tried to replicate that same in-person type model in New Orleans. When I came in, that was pretty much the history and the status of the organization was a headquarters and a staff in Houston, smaller staff and an office in New Orleans, and a couple of remote employees. As I started looking at the strategy and how we were physically going to grow, it didn't make a lot of sense to just start putting people all over the country. We wanted to take advantage of opportunities in the region that we knew existed and different funding vehicles to do that. So that was what drove that first tranche of strategy growth in the last year and a half. This year, 2025, was really focused on creating success around the expansions, setting ourselves up for future growth and continuing to drive greater impact. You can imagine here in early September, we're starting to think a lot now about what 2026 is going to look like. Where does that take us on our multi-year journey? We'll know here in a couple months more what our goals for next year are and if there's any expansions in the docket. We'd like to build kind of a base case with some growth potentials. And so the energy program manager ad this year was part of our growth case. Hiring the dedicated recruiter was part of the growth case. These are some indicators that will probably continue to grow as long as we can continue to bring in the revenue that it takes to sustain an ever-growing team.
Are there any challenges that you face as you're running the business? One of the things that caught my ear a moment ago, since I've recently set up my own business, I'm a veteran as well, by the way, and thank you for your service.
Back at you.
But you mentioned with little FTE that you're growing from approximately 775 placements, targeting over 1,000 with little FTE growth. My ears heard a little bit of an efficiency push there, a combination, higher goal setting, higher output per individual, as well as maybe how can we work more efficiently? So can you talk to some of the things you're doing to hold your FTEs steady while growing your output?
Sure. Yeah, it's a real team strategy here. Retention, internal retention is a big piece of this. As each employee stays on longer, they become more of an expert. They understand the broader goals of the team. They communicate effectively. So that's a big piece of it. I give huge credit to Alan Whiteside, my program director. He's a retired senior enlisted Marine, native Houstonian, works out of our headquarters in Houston. He's been with us for about 4 years now. And Alan, after the Marine Corps, had been an IT program manager and really understands how to work with and leverage, say, the Salesforce CRM that we have. And we've heavily modified Salesforce from a basic out-of-the-can configuration to drive as much of the candidate funnel to quote unquote sale, right? Getting a candidate hired as we can and continue to invest in that and modify it so that our employers have access to our system through portals. There's a lot of things that have been done in there to create efficiencies, and Alan's been the big driver of that for us. And on the other side, I think that rather than saying, let's go hire or we can't grow, it's a blend of bringing on staff where we truly need them and then finding a consultant or contractor of some sort that brings a specific expertise to us on a part-time basis that we could never afford to have fully inside. So things like we've been outsourced HR and benefits from the beginning. I have a lawyer on the board. We have Salesforce support contract. We have a website support contract. We have a grant writing and lobbying contract. We have some project work with a marketing company, those sorts of examples.
So grant writing, that caught my ear. Previously, you said funding sources, and then you said grant writing, and you mentioned this programming, ATDM. And I also heard you say our service is free to the transitioning veteran.
Mm-hmm.
Are you also paid by the employers, or is it 100% funded through grants and programs and et cetera?
It's all the above. When we engage, we bring employers in on a try before you buy basis, because the goal is that we offer as many high quality positions as possible. That's our mission. And so we need that first. But once an employer comes in, and if it looks like this is a good place for a veteran, they're hiring our candidates, we can work with them and they can work with us. We'll go back to them and say, look, we're a 501c3. We want to continue to grow because there's so much need out there. And we've proven that we're in a niche here that delivers value. Would you be willing to help us out? And if so, which colored t-shirt would you like? Is it corporate social responsibility dollars? Is it a foundation grant? Is it a direct talent sort of a contract where you say, we'll pay you X for certain activities and maybe numbers? We try not to go in with a predefined notion, but an expectation that we can find common ground and meet the employer where they are. Sometimes it's sponsorships for events. There's a wide variety of ways to get after that. And then on the grant front, we cracked the code right before I came on board, I think, for our first Department of Labor work grant in Louisiana, Mississippi, with some help from G&O Inc., the Economic Development Agency in New Orleans. And then we had just won the second one of those as I was joining. And interestingly, that one's winding down this month, but it's been highly successful. That one helped us pilot a healthcare initiative with Auctioner Healthcare in Louisiana with a goal of 300 veterans in 3 years, and it's well over 1,100 placements now there. That's been very successful, and we intend to carry on that strategic relationship with them. So we've had some success with a grant that funded Kentucky work, Alabama work, a non-federally funded, but it's an economic development regional agency called Delta Regional Authority, funded our Tennessee expansion. Dallas was different because none of those kind of rural area development grants really apply there. We had to go and find some corporate and wealthy donor type support to launch that one. The goal being in each case, 2 to 3 years worth of steady funds so that we can establish our team, establish our brand, go out there and make an impact, and then attract enough partners that it can become self-sustaining. That includes things like a recent Texas Workforce Commission grant. First time we've ever got one of those, and it's with a for-profit training center that provides certain skills like HVAC, plumbing, and electrical training. And their goal is to get more veterans through that program. So we partnered with them, and the state gave us essentially some pilot level money to go through and put 10 veterans through that program this year. We're in the midst of that one, and that one happens to be run, Forge Now is our partner there, and they're run by another West Pointer. So the military network helps to create, I think, a lot of like-minded opportunities for partners to come together and find creative ways to get more veterans, more opportunities, while at the same time potentially providing real value to these different workforce organizations, employers, universities that understand that they want to attract veterans and just don't know how to do it very well.
Shelby, we're getting towards the end of our time. I really enjoyed this conversation today, not just as a veteran, but somebody who's in the people helping people business. I love the mission of the organization. And we titled this podcast A New Mission, but I think that takes on two reasons. One, certainly a new mission to help our transitioning veterans, but it also sounded like it was a new mission in your career. How personally, looking back 3 years, how have you enjoyed it? Might be an unfair question, but how long do you think you're going to keep doing this?
I'll start with the second part. I have no idea, probably as long as they'll let me. But I came up with a real simple model through my own personal transition journey, through a couple of different jobs post-military, and then with the people that I help mentor on the side. Usually I'll have a whole host of people that I'm working with at various stages of their own transition, and then the work that my team at NextOp does too. there's kind of three phases, right? It's I need a job now. The stress of I got to keep paycheck coming in to take care of myself and my family becomes the overarching decision maker, and often leads people into places where they're underemployed or can't meet phase two, which is sustainability. So once you got that first job, suddenly the paycheck is less important than can I keep doing this work, right? Am I making enough? Am I making enough impact? Am I happy here? Am I away from my family too much? These sorts of things. And then eventually it's kind of like the Maslow's pyramid, right? You got to get to satisfaction. Are you satisfied with what you're doing in your life right now? And I find what our team and our culture reinforces, and a lot of people that I talk to, is that you find so much satisfaction in the mission of giving back to others and working together as a team to help solve problems like this. And so for me, I'm in phase three in job three since the Navy. And I think it's pretty incredible that I get to run an organization like this that feels a lot like a military unit without some of the things you don't want to do in your 50s in the military. But we get to help more and more and more people every day, and we're running a business and we're growing that business and building a brand, and I'm really happy about that.
Terrific. Well, it sounds like you found the mission for you, and I'm happy that you're in phase three. And it sounds like a lot of those happy employees, those 90% that are still with you, have found it as well. They're hitting their stride. You're doing more with the folks you have. You're making a bigger impact. I think that's all commendable.
Thanks,
I
Craig.
always close with, you're welcome. I always close with, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how can they reach out to you? How can they find out more?
Well, I think we're pretty prolific across LinkedIn. You can find our page or any one of us, but the easiest is just to go to our website, which is nextopvets.org. And then once you land there, it's a pretty simple website, right? I'm looking for a job, I'm looking to hire a vet, or I want to donate to the cause. Awesome.
Okay, terrific. Shelby, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Craig.
All right.
I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Take care.